it became even more doomy at one point when Jane decided we should do 3 minutes instead of 4. Because it was a lot closer to doomsday at 3 minutes. So we reverted back, so you could have the 1 minute warning.
All right, good morning, Chair Postman, members Garrett and Baldroff. The virtual lobby is open, the physical lobby is open, and the recording has begun.
Good morning, everybody. We will convene the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting for Wednesday, July 20th, 2022. Couple of quick notes. One, as Dustin mentioned, we're recording. So a reminder for those that are in the audience today, though it's only staff, so I know it won't be a problem, but the microphones in here are very sensitive. So we will ask each week for people to try not to wrestle papers or have side conversations because everybody online can hear it. Second of all, if you did not get a chance to watch the board caucus yesterday, we had a really interesting presentation on social equity rulemaking. There's a video of that available on our website. If you go to the LCB website and go to the board information, you'll find it in the July 2022 section. And then go down to week 3. It's the MS Teams recording for the board caucus for July 19th. And you can see Colette Holt's conversation with us. I thought it was really good. First item of business is actually, I'm going to postpone something that's on the agenda. We had listed the consideration of the rescission of board interim policy 01-2020 regarding frozen alcohol popsicles. And we're going to take that off the agenda today, postpone it, and come back to it at a later date. With that, now we will get back to the rest of the, we'll start with alcohol-related rulemaking and turn it over to Audrey Vasek, the Policy and Rules Coordinator for Alcohol.
Thank you, Chair Postman.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, board members Garrett and Baldroff. So today I'm requesting that the board approve the CR 102 and proposed rules to implement 2022 legislation. Oh, is it up there? Okay. Sorry, the mic was off. So today I'm requesting that the board approve the CR 102 and proposed rules to implement 2022 legislation, Senate Bill 5940. For background, Senate Bill 5940 created a new endorsement allowing breweries, wineries, and distilleries to contract with each other to provide certain packaging services such as canning, bottling, bagging, mixing, and repacking. The proposed rules are needed to implement the bill, align agency rules with the new law, and inform licensees about the availability of the endorsement, how to apply, and its requirements. To develop the proposed rules, we held a series of internal project team meetings with LCB staff from the Licensing Division, Enforcement and Education Division, and Finance Division. A set of conceptual draft rules was shared publicly through GovDelivery with feedback requested between June 9th and June 24th. In response, we received 5 public comments that are included in attachment B to the CR 102 memo. We considered the comments as the rule proposal was developed. 1 response was outside the scope, 3 were in support of the rulemaking, and another was against the idea of more regulations. Ultimately, no changes were made from the conceptual draft rules to the proposed rules. So in summary, the proposed rules create 3 new rule sections and amend 1 existing rule section. The 3 new rule sections are nearly identical, except each of them goes into a different rule chapter. So chapter 314.20 for breweries, 314.24 for wineries, and 314.28 for distilleries. The proposed new rule sections describe the endorsement and how to submit an application. The term good standing is defined as currently licensed, not suspended, and having the proper federal alcohol and tobacco tax and trade bureau permits. And the proposed amendments to the existing WAC through and 411.065 align the existing rule with the bill by allowing licensees with one of these endorsements to keep other types of liquor on the premises as needed to provide the contract packaging services. So for example, a brewery contracting with a winery could keep wine on premises or vice versa. So in terms of timeline, if the board approves the CR 102 and proposed rules today, I will file the package with the code revisor and the formal comment period will open. Notice will be published in the state register on August 3rd, and the public hearing will be scheduled for August 31st. After the formal comment period ends, if no substantive changes need to be made, the earliest the board could consider the final rules would be September 14th, which would place the effective date on October 15th. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
I have none and don't see any
I have
from the board. So thank you for the presentation. And then we will consider a motion to approve the CR 102 for implementing 2022 legislation, Senate Bill 5940 on contract packaging. Is there a motion?
I move approval of the board, the CR 102 for implementing the 2022 legislation, Senate Bill 5940, contract packaging.
I second that.
Great, thank you. And then that is approved. Thank you both. Thank you, Ms. Basic. We'll move to the cannabis side of the house and hear from Jeff Kildall, the Policy and Rules Coordinator. Mr. Kildall. Morning.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair Postman. And good morning, board members Garrett and Bollendroff. Today, I would like to present the agency response to a rulemaking petition received on May 24th, requesting the permanent allowance of curbside and walk-up cannabis sales through amendment of LCB rules. The petitioner, Jeffrey Clark, is the owner of a small retail cannabis location in Vancouver, Washington, in a small building formerly used as a coffee shop. The inside customer area of the retail location is approximately 150 square feet. The petitioner cites lack of adequate interior space for social distancing and the likely continuation of the COVID-19 transmission as a reason to allow curbside and walk-up service, as well as the safety of staff in the event of a robbery. The petitioner reports operating with walk-up and curbside sales only during the allowance period, with the doors locked between customers. So for some background on this petition, the allowances for curbside and walk-up cannabis sales were put into effect in March 2020, in addition to the COVID-19 mandatory measures for retail establishments set forth by Governor Inslee and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. These allowances were put into effect by operating cannabis, these allowances were put into effect by temporarily suspending enforcement of RCW 6950-390, which prohibits retail cannabis stores from operating cannabis vending machines or selling marijuana or cannabis products through a window or door to a purchaser who is located outside of the licensed premises at the time of sale. Under the temporary allowances, curbside and walk-up cannabis sales were permitted to all adult customers so long as the retail licensee complied with requirements for continued ID checks, video camera coverage, and demarcation of the curbside service area. On June 30th, 2021, Governor Inslee lifted most COVID-19 business restrictions, and all business sectors were allowed to return to pre-pandemic capacity and operations with limited exceptions. The LCB allowances for curbside and walk-up cannabis sales were not extended and were ended by the LCB on July 31st, 2021. Then on September 2nd, 2021, the LCB reactivated the allowances for curbside and walk-up sales through October 31st, 2021, due to a dramatic increase in COVID-19 cases resulting from the Delta variant of the COVID virus. The allowances were then extended in October 2021 and finally remained in effect until June 1st, 2022. The LCB created curbside and walk-up cannabis sales allowances during the COVID-19 pandemic, and these allowances were intended to be temporary measures to promote social distancing best practices. With the decline in new numbers of COVID-19 cases at the time, these allowances were not renewed by the LCB, and the previous enforcement of RCW 6950-390 resumed. So in conclusion, regarding the petitioner's request for rulemaking, because RCW 6950-390 prohibits curbside and walk-up cannabis sales, and also WAC 314.55.110 requires cannabis licensees to conduct their businesses in compliance with Chapter 6950 RCW. I conclude that RCW 6950-390 first must be amended to allow curbside and walk-up sales before permanent rules allowing such cannabis sales could be adopted. So my recommendation to the board is to deny the petition for this reason. So that concludes my presentation of the agency's response, and can I answer any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Kildall on this? I don't see any. Thank you. We will consider it. I'll just say, I think I agree with the recommendation. I think the statute's clear, and that's why we did not renew that one along with some of the others that we did have the authority to do. This one is clearly out of that. Then I would also just say, I think we keep an eye on what is happening with the pandemic. It is continuing. We do need to be sensitive to that and aware of that. And we stay in touch with the governor's office. Obviously, there's no indication that there'll be additional restrictions on business operations like we saw when we started this allowance initially. But we don't know what the future holds. And so we would have the ability, and I guess this is the question, we would still, even though we have let that lapse at this point, we have the ability to do it if in fact there are more restrictions put in place by the governor for other businesses. We can make that decision by rule then.
Well, I'm not sure that we could do it by rule. That's something we would have to look into. But my analysis would indicate that.
Well, you just froze. So I'll ask Dr. Hoffman to just say, rule might not have been the right way. We could do another allowance.
We could provide another allowance.
Yeah. Okay.
Like we did under when the Delta variant came along, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah, 'cause-
Yes.
And so just to add, David, I appreciate how you summarize things so nicely, but I was going to say the same thing. We're undoubtedly still in a pandemic and things are fluid, and that I would like for us to consider doing exactly what you said, and that is just stay attuned to what's happening, talking to the governor's office, and be willing to revisit this should it become necessary. But I agree with the recommendations of Jeff.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think we've lost him, unfortunately. So I will entertain a motion to accept the agency staff recommendation, which would be to deny the petition.
I make a motion that we accept the staff recommendation and deny the request.
This is Ali, I second.
Great, then that is approved. Thank you all. Thanks to Mr. Kildall. Now we do have one board interim policy to rescind, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Hoffman.
Good morning, Chair Postman, board members Garrett and Bollendroff. As you know, we've been for the last year phasing out board interim policies, or BIPs, and converting them to policy statements or just permanently rescinding them, consistent with the Administrative Procedures Act. There's several reasons behind this, but the primary reason is that policy and interpretive statements developed under the APA and filed with the Code Revisor's Office provide a formal process for the public to request the conversion of an interpretive or policy statement into rule, or to challenge the existence of the interpretive or policy statement. And board interim policies don't provide that formal process. So for attendees who are with us this morning who might not be familiar with the reasons that an agency might issue an interim policy, there's certain circumstances where an issue or event might need immediate agency action, but doesn't meet the criteria for emergency rulemaking under the APA. And one example of this was during the E-Valley outbreak, when cannabis retailers needed a way to return flavored concentrates to cannabis processors for credit against future purchases, but for a limited time. So we issued a BIP with a 2-month lifespan. Another example is when the agency made a policy decision to allow cannabis licensees to spend their own money on their businesses prior to the board actually vetting the funds. And this was realized through a BIP that allowed that to happen while rules were being developed. And once the rules went into place, the BIP was then rescinded. So this morning, I'd like to ask for your approval to rescind Board Interim Policy, or BIP, 04/2016 regarding wet flower transfer. Specifically, the subsection that this BIP concentrates on provides that a cannabis producer licensee, a cannabis producer license allows the licensee to produce, harvest, trim, dry, cure, and package cannabis into lots for wholesale processors. So this rule, and it's WAC 3155075, resulted in certain cannabis producers being unable to cost effectively transfer harvested wet or not dry plants to processors for processing into lots. And this was problematic for outdoor producer-only licensees who harvest large quantities of cannabis once a year. And that's generally between September and November, since these businesses were designed to grow rather than process cannabis. So allowing these producers to wholesale harvested wet flowers to processors prior to packaging into lots directly addressed the issue. So the policy went into effect on August 24th of 2016 and was designed to end on the date that rules became effective to implement the actual policy. Although this rule section has been open twice since that time for very narrowly scoped rulemaking, so 2017 legislative implementation that happened in 2018, and Tier 1 expansion, it was just exclusive to Tier 1 expansion and nothing else within that rule set. The rule has not been updated. So for these reasons, this policy is still necessary until more broadly scoped rulemaking concerning the specific section can be considered. And we are going to open that rulemaking next month, so that's on the horizon. So if the board approves rescission of this BIP, I'll file the policy statement, so that's PS 2203, with the code revisor, send notice to our stakeholders, and remove the original BIP from our website. Any questions?
Any questions on this? Just one quick one, just to be perfectly clear. No change between the existing board interim policy and the policy statement.
Correct.
They're basically just putting it in a different vehicle for the reasons you stated.
That's correct.
But no one should think we're making any changes
No
to the details.
changes.
Great, thank you. Okay. I don't see any other questions, so we will entertain a motion to rescind board interim policy 04-2016 regarding wet flower transfer.
This is Ali. I move that we rescind interim policy 04/2016 regarding wet flower transfer.
And this is Jim. I second that motion.
Great, thank you. Then that is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, we are to the point of our agenda for general public comment when citizens are invited to address the board. Everybody is given 4 minutes. When you have 30 seconds left, we'll gently let you know and then ask that you really do finish at 4 minutes. Everything is recorded again. We just always want to remind people. Once you're called on, everyone just be patient on this side and your side. We got to enable the audio and video if you're virtual, which everybody would be today. And then when you are able to connect, state your name and affiliation, if any, for the record. And with that, we will go to the first person we have signed up, which is B.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to have a public comment.
Please, great. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm here to give public comment in support of the curbside delivery COVID-19 allowances that expired on June 1st, such as curbside pickup. Safety concerns had been mentioned as possible reasons to allow that curbside allowance to expire, but by the LCB's own admission, the LCB has had 0 incidents stemming from the curbside allowance. Issues regarding zoning laws and sequestered retail locations to larger city industrial areas aside, I wanted to bring to the board's attention that in light of safety, and according to the LCB's annual report in 2021, out of the 11,466 complaint investigations, more than 10,000 were for alcohol and just 570 for cannabis. That's less than 0.5%. And when it came to youth access to age-restricted products, cannabis had a compliance rate of 95%, while liquor and tobacco had compliance rates of just 75%. And to point out that liquor compliance was down 12%, yet once again, I stress that even as such the case, more generous allowances for delivery of alcohol were extended all the way through June of 2023. And while all board members have expressed, and this is probably the most important part of my public comment, while all the board members have expressed concerns regarding the uncertainty of the ongoing pandemic waves, the board has nevertheless allowed the most effective protection for vulnerable individuals to expire. Since those allowances lapsed on June 1st, Washington has had over 107,000 new cases, more than 4,000 additional hospitalizations because of COVID-19, and nearly 500 Washingtonians have lost their lives to a preventable disease called COVID-19. And it is now the second leading cause of death in Washington. And per the CDC, the amount of population living in a location of high transmission has gone from 45% now over 85% since the end of May. And all but one Washington county is in an area of high or substantial transmission. I cannot overstate how much the choice to allow these allowances to expire during the onset of Omicron has felt to many discriminatory and punitively bureaucratic, adding to an already a more enormous sense of disenfranchised grief of those most impacted. The risk is real and it still exists. And in light of the statements from the White House and warnings from the local and state health departments, the ultra contagious BA.5 variant and guidance regarding indoor masking absent of mandates, in addition to the waning effect of vaccines with these new variants, particularly on the behalf of those who might have a disability or comorbidities, which would complicate an infection, putting them in a high-risk category, I urge you to continue these allowances. Vulnerable folks who have already had to bear the brunt disproportionately of this unrelenting pandemic are at significant risk of being left behind. Now, we should not have to run a deadly gauntlet, facing more harm just to obtain relief for ailments that already put us at risk in this cruel new normal. But nonetheless, I please and I urge you to not only reconsider a permanent rule for curbside, but to allow it temporarily until then for safe curbside delivery. I thank you for your time and all of your services. That's all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thoughtful and compelling. And I think you heard the topic of some discussion here as well. So we'll continue that. Thank you. Our next person signed up is Sammy Saad.
Good morning, Chair. Sammy Saad did register to speak, but is not online today.
Okay, thank you. Next person we have signed up then is Christopher King.
Wait a minute, guys. Hold on a second. Don't start my time yet because I want to say this. Kevin Shelton just called me, and this is, we've been having this problem with him, okay? And he's signed up, but he's not letting him in as a participant. It would just let him in, as an attendee. So this is happening again. So I'm ready to start my time now.
Well,
Can I respond to that?
yeah, just a sec. Why don't you just hold on, Mr. King?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. King, this is Dustin. Everybody that joins the meeting does join as an attendee. If
Right.
you're registered to speak, once your name is called on, you will be given camera and microphone privileges, but not until then.
I
So he's in
understand
the
that.
meeting. I do see him registered, but he can't turn his microphone or camera on until it's his turn to speak.
But he's the next person signed up. So as soon as you're done, Dustin will change his settings and then he'll be able to talk.
Okay, we'll see. There have been issues with it, but I know, but he signed up. Yeah. Okay, he
Yeah.
signed up before me though. So that's the thing. Anyway, all right, I'm ready to start.
Anyhow, go ahead. We'll start your time now.
Thank you. Okay, listen, this agency has been fraught with corruption for years and allegations of cronyism and all things of that nature for years, okay? Well before I got here. You had also the Cornell School of Law and Public Policy, Miller Nash went into it, the Government Accountability Institute went into it, okay? These are things independent of me. They're saying some of the same things that John Novak and I had said in our pending federal litigation, okay? And so in terms of transparency, just remember, you guys work for us, all right? And so this means that when you're taking notes during a meeting, as we see Ollie Garrett always taking notes, okay? She was taking notes on the 22nd when I allegedly drove her to tears by talking about the murder of her brother. All of that was a stunt by Paula Sardina's attorneys who brought that issue up to me. I responded as a gentleman, and you remember what I said about saying a prayer for the family, for the apprehension of.
We'll start your time again. We'll hold your time. I'm just going to ask you, you get a lot of leeway to talk. I'm just going to beg you to leave board members' personal lives out of this conversation. It's not germane to what
Well,
we do.
no, it is
Distracting
germane.
and disruptive.
It
Um,
is.
And
May
you
I
have
please?
the ability to ignore me. So we will, but there's my
Yeah.
plea to you and anybody else who may be listening to try to keep these comments within the realm of what we do here and trying to be respectful of other
I was
human
quite,
beings.
are you finished yet?
I'm quite finished, yes.
Thank you. I'll continue. The whole point was I was quite respectful when you heard what I said, but your Ollie Garrett's friend, Paula Sardinas, and her lawyers twisted it in court and cut off half of what I said. And in the public record, they introduced the murder of her brother, okay? And they stunted it in a way to try to get a criminal conviction on me when between Jim Buchanan and Paula Sardinas, I'm the only person who doesn't have a criminal record. It's a fact. I have the records pulled from my private investigator, okay, who is a well-known family in private investigations, Adam Winquist. Okay, they were on the Amanda Knox case. Okay, you may have heard of that. So Ollie was taking notes during my presentation when I allegedly drove her to tears. That's false. You can see the video. All right, listen to what he said to me. An appropriate punishment of the perpetrator.
He shows up to every liquor and cannabis board hearing, and at the last one, he went on a 4-minute monologue about Ollie Garrett, who's on the board. He just started talking about her brother, who was gruesomely murdered recently. You brought the Ollie Garrett to tears. I have it right here.
You and Dave. So these guys are lawyers, and they're associated. Their family's associated with Emerald Hayes. There's a Megan Otto, who's on some of the documents I finally got from the board. Okay. And they're telling lies about this. Ollie was never crying. She was taking notes. And now I find out that, she allegedly doesn't have notes from that meeting. Well, when you guys are in a public meeting, given the issues you've had before with credibility and conducting affairs behind closed doors when Art West sued you and settled for $192,000 and went away. Okay, these are facts, all right? So it might behoove you then, if you're taking notes on public time, those are my notes. I'd ask Ollie to agree not to destroy those notes in the future, since we clearly see her taking notes during the time that I'm speaking. So that would be great if we could start with that. All right, so next. All I've been doing here with my non-criminal self, okay, is trying to get information. And again, we still don't have the information from Kevin Shelton that was his association with you, correspondence files from the envelope that was sent out before with Nate Miles and all that. We don't have any of that. We don't have any of the correspondence from when he had a lawyer trying to get him a license and equity. We have none of that. All right, it was promised to be on the 15th again in July. Still don't have it, okay? There was a third delay. Sammy Saad can't get his file, okay? He's asked for that a number of times. The federal judge, when they threw that case out, federal judge
Christopher, you have 30 seconds.
It said he never applied. He did apply, okay? And also, nobody can get the documents as to how Emerald Hayes got their licenses, when it's a known fact that the only people who get licenses had to come through two criminals. Jim Buchanan and Paula Sardinas are criminals. I am not. They have horrible driving records, passing bad checks, all the above, okay? And continuing legal issues that are out there. And as people who are associated with this board and who have part and practice with the policy of this board, that needs to be investigated.
Christopher, that's your time.
Simple. Good night.
Okay. Next person on our list is Kevin Shelton. Just give us 1 second. Dustin's gonna make you a presenter. That's done. You hopefully should be able to join us now, Mr. Shelton. You want to try? And just checking to make sure your device is unmuted as well. That's the most often issue. That's why we remind people of that. But take a look. We'll give you a couple minutes to try to figure that out. So at this point, you should be able to turn your camera on as well as your microphone, and you are set up on the Teams app as able to present to us. All right, we're going to let you keep trying that, Mr. Shelton. Move to the next person we have signed up, which is Joe Rammel. Are you able to connect, Mr. Rammel? Just checking, Dustin, there. Mr. Rammel is set as a presenter.
Yeah, Mr. Ramble should have access to his camera and his microphone at this point.
So you'd have to unmute both on the Teams app up in the upper right corner. There's a slash through the microphone probably. You got to do that. And then you got to look at your device, whether it's a laptop or a computer or a phone you're on, and make sure that it also is not muted. Sorry, this isn't working. Let me check Kevin Shelton again.
Kevin Shelton should also have access to his camera and microphone.
So if either of you, Joe Rammel or Kevin Shelton, are able to unmute and speak, let me know, and we'll give you your
How's
4
that?
minutes. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'm a little technologically challenged.
Oh, me too. I hear you.
Am I on?
Yeah, you bet. So go ahead, Mr. Rammel. Thank you.
Well, my topic, my name's Joe Rammel. I'm the owner of the plant factory, New Day Cannabis, over here in Spokane area. And I'm calling to see if the LCB at a high level is aware of the problem that has been created out here for the legitimate growers with this pesticide testing program. So I had been on many, committees or whatever you want to call it about this for the last couple of years. And I've always maintained that, number one, if you're going to allow self-sampling, you might as well not do it. So I'm just going to put a pin in that for now, because self-sampling, it just gives too many ways to work around the system. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem I have is the part of the rule that said anything harvested before April 2nd does not need to be pesticide tested. And the products that are, let's say in our case, the products that we have in our inventory that we're getting ready to sell, we didn't have to go out and have it pesticide tested. Although everything we've ever had tested comes back non-detected. We don't use pesticides. However, I don't know if you're aware of the market value out here, but prior to this, we've always been dealing with inflation for most of this year. But prior to April 2nd, 15 at the retail level, $15 or $20 for an eighth of good pot was considered pretty low. And we were servicing that low end and we were doing okay. But now there's $5 and $6 eighths out there in the store, and it's all coming from growers that are dumping this product on the market in below cost price because they have pounds and pounds and pounds in the warehouse, and they only have to September 22nd to get rid of it. Previous to this, many times this kind of product went to processing for concentrates, but now if somebody is making concentrates, it doesn't matter whether it was tested before or not. After the concentrate is tested, it has to be tested, and they flunk. So they won't buy that product. So now the only outlet of that is to dump it on the market. My question is, why did we give the bad players 3 or 4 months to dump this product on the market, and they're killing the good players? I just laid off half of my staff and shut down half of my buildings. I was over in the Tri-Cities area, and half the pens in the outdoor grower business are empty because we can't sell the product we have. Why should we keep the lights on and have more inventory? So my question is, did the LCB anticipate that being a problem? Oh, by the way, I've had some of that $5 pot tested and it doesn't pass. And then one of the labs over here explained to me that when they knew pesticide testing was coming, they refined their methodology so they could test for, I think it was microbials and pesticides at the same time. So this pot that's going in that doesn't require pesticide testing, when they do the microbials, they can see all the pesticides that are there. They forward this information to the Liquor Control Board and was told, quit sending us this stuff. It's the way the rule's set up. Now, my question is, so if the LCB is aware of this, why did they give the bad players 3 or 4 months to dump this product on the market, and they're killing the good players? So So here's the end result of this is you guys have come out with a rule that doesn't prevent pesticides from getting on the shelf. There's too many ways under self-sampling to beat that system.
Joe, you have 30 seconds.
At the same time, they have killed the legitimate guys. I'm waiting your comment.
Great, thank you for the comments. I would just say one, we are aware of these concerns. I certainly haven't heard that anybody here said quit sending us this stuff. We'll follow up and make sure. And then I'll also just give the same reminder I often do, that if there's any complaint that's been filed around these things, the board is not allowed to know what's going on. So sometimes there are things that we're walled off from because we have to sit as the arbiters of those cases. So that's just a note of caution for all of us on that. But we are aware of that, and I'll say that, you know, the decision to have a sell down was not at all devised to let, as you put it, the bad guys do it. But we heard from folks in the same situation you were, which they said, you know, we don't use those. Let us move our product before we have to go into that new system. And you know. But and also just say that the entire thing is built on compromises to try to get this started, to not be too onerous in that transition period. But to me, the most important thing is the consumers know what they're getting. So I appreciate that input, and I will be following up. And now we'll go back to Kevin Shelton one more time. We'll give you a couple minutes here, Mr. Shelton. I really want you to try to figure out what's going on there. So now it looks like it's still muted, but is that just?
That's because he's on mute.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So just showing, you'll see that it's muted, which means that at your end, you haven't clicked on that microphone icon to do that. So, you know, I would also just say that the next time you sign up, maybe, is there a phone option that you can do that? You can use the phone number to dial into Teams for the next meeting and give your comments. That might work easier, might be better. And the other thing is you can always submit written testimony and comments as well. So once again, I'm sorry we were not able to get you connected today. That brings us to the end of the agenda. I do take a second here. You know, we give people who comment wide latitude in what they say. This is built into Washington state law for citizens to be able to address not just regulators, but any form of government, but particularly, you know, regulators are taking action. There's a requirement for a public comment period in that meeting. Mr. King is right that we work for the residents of Washington state, and we always want to hear from them. That said, I don't want anyone to believe that allowing those comments is in any way means that this board endorses those comments, what is said. I have had conversations, as you know, if you're a regular, you know, to try to get people to stay on point, be respectful. And I've largely failed on that in some regards. And that's a disappointment to me because I find the comments today, we had some really interesting input on two issues that we are dealing with here. And it's I'll just be completely honest, it is of great value to the board to hear from licensees, consumers, you know, no offense to our lobbyist friends, but we hear something different than when if it's a lobbyist or an association. These are just people who have issues, and it resonates with us. So I appreciate that. I do not appreciate the continuing focus on board members' personal lives and personal trauma. And I'm sorry that Member Garrett has to go through this over and over again. She's stronger than I am, but there's only so much we can do. All we can do is hope for the best, hope for a little mercy and politeness and civility, and we'll keep asking for that when we can. Anything to add from you, the board members?
No, just thank you, David, for your comments and appreciate your willingness to, engage in the discussion and emphasize how much we appreciate public comment and how much it helps the work that we do. But personal attacks are not necessarily helpful.
Yeah, definitely not. So thank you. Okay, with that, we will adjourn the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting for July 20th, 2022. And again, just a reminder, if you missed yesterday's meeting and are interested in what we heard from the expert on social equity, it's on the website under board information. You just got to go down to the July 2022 section. So I hope you'll have a chance to do that. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.